What is going on, Mr. Wolf? How you doing this on a Sunday?
I am great. It's so good to see you. It's been a while. I feel like
It has been a while. Where are you hanging your hat at these days? Still north of the border here south, or where?
Yeah, I've been hanging out in Mexico since October. So I skipped my homeland of Canada and decided I didn't really want to be locked down. So I've been touring around Mexico and loving it. So it's been great.
That nice color skin from the sun and the beaches there, looking good, brother.
Definitely don't look Canadian right now. Everybody speaks Spanish to me, which unfortunately I don't speak, but they usually greet me in Spanish.
You know what? You look 20 years younger, actually a little bit. You look a little, because you got a little color on you, man. Looking
there you go. Well, come on down. You should come down too.
Exactly. Well, hey guys, if you are active investor looking for a great way to get started in notes or a different field of note investing, this is the guy you want to hear from today, talking about investing in tax liens and tax deeds and overages, stuff like that. So, Mike, I know you got an amazing presentation. I'm going to shut up, get out of the way here, let you bring your presentation up and go from there. All right, brother?
All right. Let me, I'm much better at real estate than I am with technology. So just give me a second here.
Good. You hit the share screen button. It should pop up a screen with what you've got open.
There we go. Okay, let's see. And all right, there we go. So hopefully people can see my screen and hopefully I can hit play, but I've got this little menu in its way. 1 second here.
You're good. Yeah. Just there you go, play.
All right. Are you seeing hopefully you're seeing my screen?
Yeah, it looks good, man. Looks good.
All right. I even impress myself sometimes. Without my team's help, I actually managed to do it. So welcome everybody. It's great to be here. And I want to talk to you today about well, first of all, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I've been investing in real estate for almost 32 years. January will be my 32nd year anniversary of being in this amazing industry. And one of the things that I wish, if I could go back to my much younger self and say, hey, back in those days, I used to do things very traditionally. I would save up money for a down payment, qualify for a mortgage, buy a home. And I kept doing that. And I didn't realize there are a whole lot of other ways to get in the game that they weren't as cash intensive. They weren't as reliant on you being able to qualify for a mortgage. And so I want to talk to you today about something that I like to call the trifecta of real estate. And I also want to cover, there's so many myths and misconceptions around tax liens, tax deeds. Most people haven't even heard of overages. So I'm going to talk about some stuff that you may not have heard about, or maybe you've heard about it, but you may have some false information, as I did when I was first trying to figure this out. So we're going to talk about that. So who am I? I've been, as I mentioned, doing this for a long, long time. When I first started, I was actually a starving university student. I was actually living my parents' dream for me. And they wanted me to be especially my mother wanted me to be a lawyer. And so I went and got my first degree. And with that came a whole bunch of student loans. I decided, you know what, before I go and get my second degree and get even further in debt, I want to pay these things off. And a friend of mine, his mother was a manager at the phone company in the city in Calgary, where I'm from, Calgary, Canada. And so I decided to get a job there. And while I was there, I managed to get my credit pretty good. I managed to save up a little bit of money here and there. And I remember I bought my very first home. And shortly after I did that, my mortgage broker calls me up and goes, Mike, if you want to buy another property, I can get you another mortgage. And I go, another property? Why would I want another property? That seemed like the most foreign concept in the world to me back in those days. I wish I got those calls every day now. I don't, but I wish I did. And he explained, well, you buy another property, you put a tenant in there, they pay down your mortgage, they pay through rent. And 20 years, 25 years down the road, you've got this place paid off, everything is gravy, and hopefully you've got some good appreciation. And I thought, okay, that kind of makes sense. So I did that. I bought another home. The only due diligence I knew in those days was I wanted to buy a pretty home and one that was close to where I lived so I didn't have to go very far to pick up my rent check. And as luck would have it, a couple of years after I bought that property, the market took off. And all of a sudden I was sitting on a bunch of equity, not just in my principal residence, but in the second property. Now, back then I was in my mid-20s and I thought I knew everything there was to know about real estate. My ego kind of got the best of me. I promptly quit my job at the phone company. I told my mother that, no, Mom, being a lawyer is your dream. I'm going to be a real estate investor. And I remember she begged me to go get my second degree. She said, well, at least have something to fall back on in case real estate doesn't work out. But I thought I knew everything. I was a know-it-all. And so I quit my job. I didn't go back to law school, and basically managed to lose almost all of what I made on that first deal on my next deal, because you got to remember, I no longer had a job, so couldn't qualify for a mortgage anymore. I didn't think about that before I quit, so don't do that. And I bought a property. I went from, you got to remember, that property was meant to be a 25-year hold. That was going to be my retirement. And all of a sudden, I don't have a paycheck coming in anymore. And I needed to figure out, well, how am I going to get a paycheck in, 60 days, 90 days before I burn through all this money I had made? And so, of course, I managed to screw up and lose most of what I made. And then I became very, very humble. I went from being a know-it-all to a very, very humble person after I lost a lot of money trying to do a flip that I didn't know how to do. And apparently buying a home that's pretty and close to where you live works a lot better when you're buying to hold than when you're trying to flip a home. And so I became humble, and instead of thinking I knew it all, I started to seek answers. And I hired my first mentor, who showed me the way. And if it weren't for that, I would not, I might be here on Scott's show talking about law, but I would definitely not be talking about real estate investing. And so that's how I got my start. And the reason I like to tell that story is you're all here on a Sunday learning and taking time out of your weekend to be here and put new tools in your tool belt, new skills. And so I want to applaud you for not being a know-it-all, but instead being a learn-it-all. And I think there's so much value in that. I wish I had done that before I went and attempted to do a flip, and very unsuccessfully. So I want to just congratulate you for being here. Let's get into some of the, and also the other thing I want to mention is that if you're here, like, I didn't even know I wanted to be a real estate investor. When I first started, that wasn't even on my radar. It wasn't even something I dreamed about. And the fact that you're here means that you at least have an interest in real estate. You're taking the time to learn some strategies. And so if you don't think you can do it, well, I wasn't even planning on being a real estate investor, and I did it. So I know you can do this. So I know some of you just need some extra encouragement, and maybe you're struggling a little bit, especially right now. The market is really tough. There's not enough inventory. There's a whole bunch of people fighting over it, but just stick with it. If you stick with this, it'll be an amazing career for you. But keep doing what you're doing, keep learning. So stick with Scott's show here. But anyway, why do I love real estate? After 31 and a half years, why do I still wake up excited to do this? And the reason I love it is because we're problem solvers. I don't even like the term real estate investor. I love the term problem solver, because behind every real estate deal, nobody randomly wakes up in the morning and says, hey, let's put our home on the market. There's always a reason behind it. And so it has nothing to do with windows and drywall and doors. That's not why I'm excited about real estate. It's nothing to do with the product itself. It's the fact that there's people that need our help. And if we're on the front lines creating a win for them and creating a win for ourselves, there's no better way to make a living than that, in my opinion. So every deal you do from now on should be a win-win. And I know some of you who know what tax deeds are, you think, well, how's that a win? These people just lost their home to the county. We're going to get to that. And I'm going to show you how you can create a win for the people that are losing their homes as well. So we're going to get there. So stick with me. But behind every real estate transaction is a story. I don't know if it's a family show, but this is a sign that says home for sale by owner because they didn't like their neighbor. So sometimes people move because they're not happy with the people that are living near them. This one says husband left us for a 22-year-old house for sale by scorned, slightly bitter, newly single owner. So sometimes there's a divorce. And owner ready to croak, must sell. People, obviously, we get older. We need to move down. We need to move to something with no stairs. There's lots of things that happen in our lives that cause us to need to move. And in the case of tax deeds, the reason this exists is that the county needs this money. When they have the property taxes, they need that money for their roads, their schools, or hospitals, police. This is where that money allegedly goes to. I don't know that all the money does go there, but that's another story. But this has been around for a long, long time. Since the advent of property taxes, there's been a way to deal with people that aren't paying those property taxes. And all across the United States, every single county has a way that they deal with a taxpayer that becomes delinquent. And so we're going to talk about tax liens and tax deeds. Those are two different ways. Those are two different things, by the way. A lot of people mistakenly think they're the same thing. So we're going to go into a little detail on that. But first, we'll start with a tax lien. Now, the first thing you need to know about a tax lien, make sure you write this down, is that when you buy a tax lien, you're not buying a property. A lot of people think this is a really inexpensive way to buy a property, but you're not actually buying a property. And this will vary from county to county. So I'm just going to give you the most common scenario, imagine, we'll pick on Scott for a minute. Imagine Scott got in his mailbox from the county, hey, Scott, your taxes are due on July 1st. They're $1,000. If you don't pay us on time, we're going to penalize you. Let's just say 20%. That number is going to vary from county to county. We'll just use that number. And so July 1st comes and goes. Scott does not make that payment. And now Scott owes, instead of $1,000, he now owes $1,200. Well, unbeknownst to Scott, the county, they still want this money. They need this money right away to cover. They can't call the chief of police and say, hey, you know what, when Scott pays his taxes, we'll pay your wage. They can't do that. So they need this money right away. And so unbeknownst to Scott, they create what's called a TLC, or tax lien certificate. And that tax lien certificate, they're going to go and sell that to an investor like you, like myself. And so imagine I go and I buy this tax lien certificate. I'm going to give the county $1,000. So I'm paying what Scott was supposed to pay. And then the county is going to keep bugging Scott saying, hey, you're still behind on your property taxes. When are you going to pay? They keep bugging him. And by the way, in many counties, you're not allowed to actually contact the delinquent taxpayer. The county does that for you. You're not actually allowed by law to do that. And some you are, some you can't. But in any case, the county's doing most of the heavy lifting for you because they're the ones bugging Scott. You're just living your life. You're not doing anything else. You put $1,000 out there, and then one day you go to your mailbox and suddenly there's a check for $1,200 because the county finally got Scott to pay. Now, it's obviously, it pays a lot better than leaving your money in a bank account, and it pays a lot better. And that by the way, can range. That amount, that 20%, is a number that I just randomly picked. It can be as high as 36%, by the way. And there's counties though where it's called, you bid down the interest. So it might start at 20%, but then somebody else says, no, you know what, I'll take that, but I'm willing to do it for 15%. And then somebody says 12, so it actually gets bid down. Now, the biggest problem is in some counties, your competition is a bank, and you're up against institutional investors that have millions or billions of dollars of other people's money. And they can afford to do this for very, very small amounts. They can do it for 3 and 4% because they're taking money on deposit from you and paying you next to nothing. So they're using your money to bid against you in theory. And but that's how it works in general. Now, there's also a second part of that. And I don't know if your audience is as old as I am and they remember, but back, I think it was the 80s or the 90s, there used to be these infomercials on TV. And you see, they show this person holding a sign saying, I got this property for $500. And this is what they were doing. They were buying these tax liens. And Scott's got, when he doesn't pay his taxes, he's got a limited amount of time. Depending on the county, it might be a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. There is always going to be a certain amount of time, a maximum amount of time that Scott has to get caught up, or else now myself, as a person who bought that tax lien certificate, can foreclose on him and take that property. Now, in theory, in those infomercials, it looked really awesome. Hey, I just bought this home for $500. In reality, that happens maybe 2% of the time. 98% of the time, Scott's going to pay that money. He's going to resume, you're going to be out of the picture. You're going to get paid, but you're going to be out of the picture, and then you're going to reinvest in another lien. But in the rare instance that Scott doesn't pay after the year, 2 years, 3 years, then you're in a position where you can foreclose and get that property for pennies on the dollar. Now, it sounds really great in theory, and I'm not saying don't do tax liens. They're good, but I'm going to show you something better here in a couple of minutes. But the biggest problem is quite often when somebody does let their property go for a very small amount with a tax lien, it's quite often because there's a problem with it, and now it becomes your problem. So let me give you an example. Imagine Scott knew that before that home was built, the land had been contaminated by, there used to be a gas station on that land, and the land is contaminated. And in order to get it back up to code, it would cost $100,000. Now, Scott knows this, and so he doesn't want it to be his headache anymore. So you go and you buy this property for pennies on the dollar. Well, you actually get the tax lien certificate for pennies on the dollar, and then you eventually foreclose. Well, with ownership comes liability. And now you've just taken Scott's liability away from him, and now you're responsible for bringing that property up to code. So the reason I tell you this is that most of the time it's going to be fine, but there are going to be instances where you don't want to own that property. And so you need to do your due diligence to determine what it is you're buying, what it is that if you had to foreclose, do you actually want to own this property or do you not? And so these are things you want to look at. So I'm going to show you a safer way to make similar, if not better, much better gains actually. And I'm going to show you why I don't personally do liens. And I'm not saying that they're a bad thing. I have a friend that makes millions of dollars every year with liens. He does it institutionally. He actually deals with counties where he buys their entire inventory, and he's got a law firm on site, and he's made a really good career out of it. But for most of us, they're just buying one or two. It's difficult to be able to afford to do the due diligence, because most of the time you're just in the original example, you would have made $200 if Scott pays it off. Well, if you spend $400 to do due diligence to make 200, that's going to be a bad investment most of the time for you. So you don't want to do that. So let's go to the sister of tax liens, and that is tax deeds. Now, with a tax deed, if you go to an auction, and that's the most common way that you'll get a tax deed, you go to auctions, or better yet, you have a team that goes to the auction for you. We're going to talk about that. But you're actually buying a property. If you're the high bidder, you actually own that home. You're not buying a certificate. You're not having to foreclose. That's already been done for you. And if you're the high bidder at these tax deed auctions, you get the deed to the property right then and there. You're now the owner, and you have every right to flip it. You have the right to live in it. You have the right to rent it. You can do whatever you want with it because you're now the owner. And so these require a little bit more money, tax deed. To give you an idea, I've had students pick up single family homes for $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000. So they don't go as low. The tax deeds, 80% of tax liens, let's talk about liens for a second. 80% of tax liens are under $1,000. They're usually for very small amounts. With tax deeds, you're actually buying a property. You're going to need a little bit more capital to play with. Doesn't have to be your money though. And I'm not sure if I'll have time to cover that, but I'm going to try my best. But in any case, you don't need a ton of money. And back in the days when I used to save up a down payment and qualify for a mortgage, my down payment was more than what I actually paid for the actual whole property at these auctions. And so now these tax deeds, they will vary from place to place. I'm going to just show you here a map. So if you look at the green states, those are all liens. And the reddish pink ones, those are deeds. Now there's also something called redeemable deeds. And those are only in a few different states. They're in Texas, Tennessee, Georgia, Connecticut, and Hawaii. There's only the 5 states that have that. And with a redeemable deed, it's kind of a combination between a lien and a deed. I'm going to explain that here in just a second. And I'm going to tell you why I like that a lot. But first, I want to talk about why now is a great time. If this is something you were thinking of doing, or maybe this is the first time you've ever even heard of it, here's why this is going to be massive going forward, is that these auctions have been shut down because of COVID, just like every other public place. It's been shut down because usually hundreds of people gather in these halls to go bid on these properties. And obviously everything got shut down for COVID. So if we look at my favorite market, my favorite tax deed auction takes place in Harris County, which is the greater Houston, Texas area. And that auction was shut down for 14 months straight. And it just actually reopened. It's kind of reopened on a limited basis, meaning that they're just auctioning off a small amount of properties compared to what they normally do. Because obviously the last thing they want is to have somebody get COVID at the auction, then have to shut down another 14 months. But if we do the math, normally in a typical month, the county will auction off 500 to 1,000 homes. It's pretty typical. So if you take 500, multiply that by 14, we're around 7,000 properties of backlog in inventory that the county needs to get rid of. Those are homes that would have sold this past year and a half, but because of COVID, they weren't able to do that. So there's going to be a large supply, a lot more than normal. And even before COVID, there was enough supply that, now I don't want you to think there's no competition. You're going to be the only one there. You can go pick up 10 properties, flip them, retire the next day. I want to set realistic expectations for you. There will be competition there, but there's going to be a lot more inventory than there's ever been going forward, especially as the auctions, like I said, they're kind of testing the waters right now. As they go full speed ahead, we're going to see a lot more opportunity, and that's just coming down the pipeline right now. Also, if you consider that a lot of people think, oh, well, the economy is going to be super bad and all this bad stuff is coming. That's exactly when you're going to make the most money on things like foreclosures, tax liens, tax deeds, all these different strategies, and something called overages, which I'm going to teach you towards the end. So more millionaires are created during the 1930s. And also, if you look back to 2007, 2008, there was a big transfer of wealth during that time frame as well. I believe the biggest transfer of wealth, though, is yet to come. I think we're heading into that as the stimulus checks are going to stop coming in, as the foreclosure moratorium comes to an end. There's going to be a lot of changes. And I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for especially small investors to go make some really big gains if they're doing exactly what you're doing. And that's educating yourself on a Sunday and every other day. You're taking this time to learn new skills as opposed to watching Netflix all day long, as most people are doing. So a lot of people ask me though, Mike, if this is such a great strategy, why haven't I heard of it? Well, most of the people who know how to do this don't want you to know how to do this. So for example, you're never going to go to a realtor. Most realtors, by the way, have no clue how to do a tax deed, but you're never going to go to a realtor and say, hey, I'd like to buy a rental property from you. What have you got? They're never going to say to you, you know, you should really go to there's way better deals at the auction. They're never going to tell you that because they don't get paid if you go to the auction. They get paid if you buy a property through them. The banks, they're going to try to sell you their mutual funds. They're going to try to sell you their CDs. They're going to try to sell you their products. They're actually the ones, they're taking your money, you're depositing it with them, and they're going and doing, they're mostly doing liens. They don't typically buy properties, but they do tax liens. And there's a lot of hedge funds that are doing liens and deeds and picking up properties at these auctions. They have no incentive to teach you how to do it. So that's why you haven't heard of it. And certainly there's a few people that have written some books. I've seen some courses. And when I was trying to figure this stuff out, the more I tried to learn, the more confused I got because there's so much conflicting information out there. And so I eventually just had to take the leap of faith and make myself a human guinea pig and just try it and figure out what was true, what was false. And that's what I've done. So I'm going to tell you the things that I've learned over the years. I've been doing tax deeds for around 12, 13 years now. And I wish, like I said, this is stuff I wish I would have known back in the days when I was first starting, because I could have got a lot more properties a lot quicker. The other thing that people are often skeptical, well, why does somebody let their home go to auction for such a small amount? Well, there's a lot of reasons. Loss of job is a big one, death, divorce. A lot of times, you know, the husband, the tax bill comes due. The husband says, I'm not paying it. And the wife says, I'm not paying it. And they just, despite each other, nobody pays it. Next thing you know, their home's on the auction block. They lose it. You could be upside down on your mortgage as well. So these people may be behind on their mortgage payments, not just their back taxes, but also their mortgage payments. And they're so far behind that they just can't get caught up. The great thing, by the way, about these tax deeds is when you buy the property at the auction, all the mortgages get wiped out. All the liens get wiped out in most cases. And that's why when I said earlier that it was very confusing for me to figure out what was true and what was false. Some of them said, oh, no, all these things disappear. Other people said, no, they don't. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So once again, I had to figure out what was true, what was false. But the vast majority of the time, the mortgages get wiped out, and so do the other liens, and you get a clear title property for very, very small amounts of money. Also, people lose their property because sometimes they don't update their information with the county. So a really famous example, there's somebody who you may be familiar with, a billionaire named Wayne Huizenga. He's since passed. But if you've ever been to Fort Lauderdale and taken those water taxis, they're around all those beautiful properties. He owned quite a few of those. And so when he switched offices a number of years ago, when he did that, he had his assistant send in a notice to the county saying a list of the addresses and where his new mailing address was. Except she forgot to do one property, and that property was a piece of land worth a little bit over $1 million. Somebody picked it up at a tax deed auction for $60,000, and Wayne Huizenga, of course, was furious, and he pulled the "Don't you know who I am" card, and that didn't go very far for him. And he tried to sue the county to get the property back, and he lost because the county did exactly what they were supposed to do. The county sends notice to the address on file and saying, hey, your taxes are due on such and such a date. And if you don't pay after a certain amount of time, the county's going to put it up for auction. So Wayne Huizenga actually lost a 7-figure property, over $1 million, and some lucky investor picked it up for $60,000. So this doesn't happen every day. That's a very extreme example. So once again, I want to set realistic expectations. But the reason I tell you this is there's so many different reasons why these homes might end up on the market. And like I said, just in Harris County alone, we see hundreds of them month after month after month. All right. So the reason, and by the way, a lot of people say, well, why Harris County? Why Texas? Well, even before COVID, I've always loved Texas for a number of reasons. I don't live there, by the way. I don't pick it because I live there. I don't pick it because I vacation there. I pick it because to me, it's not the low-hanging fruit, but it's because it's what's called a redeemable deed, which we're going to talk about. It's a little bit more complicated, and your competition usually wants that low-hanging fruit. They want to push that easy button. They just want to go to an auction, come home with a property and have it really easy. And here in Texas, things are a little bit more complicated. If you're willing to do that extra little step or two, that's going to eliminate a lot of your competition and give you a lot more opportunity to pick up a property when you go to these auctions. So Texas is booming. It was before COVID, and it is even more so now. There's a lot of Californians moving there because there's no state income tax, and most Californians are very fed up with their the tax system in their state, as in several other states. A lot of people are not happy, and so a lot of people move to places like Texas to get away from that, where their state income tax is zero. Now, the thing that you need to know is that the county gets that money from, and the state gets the money from somewhere. If they're not getting a state income tax, they're not coming up with this money. The politicians are not paying for this stuff out of their own pocket. So how they make up for it is in the property taxes. And so property taxes are high, and that leads to a lot of people getting delinquent on those property taxes. But it is booming. A lot of people are moving, particularly to what's called the Texaplex. If we look at this map, at the top of the map, we have Dallas and Fort Worth. Bottom left is San Antonio and Austin, and bottom right is Houston. And that's where the biggest gains in population are. That's where people are moving to. And if you can get properties in that triangle, that's where the big money is, especially if you're looking to flip or if you're turning these properties into rental properties. That's where you want to do it in general. Now, there's auctions in every other part of the state as well. But if it was me and I was just starting fresh, that's where you're going to get the biggest amount of inventory, the most opportunity, and the easiest exit strategies for whatever it is you decide to do with these properties once you get them.
Mike, thanks for giving away our secrets.
I know, I blew it. Everybody's going to be heading your direction now, so watch
They
out.
already are.
I know. I don't even have to tell them; they're already doing it. So, but absolutely, because the property taxes are high, they tend to be around 2.6 to 3%, which is, one of my other favorite markets is Atlanta, Georgia, where the property taxes are around 1 to 1.25%. So anyway, it does create a lot of people running behind on their taxes. And of course, eventually those properties end up on the auction block. So Texas is a hybrid state. To me, it's the best of both worlds. If you were thinking of doing tax liens, I would recommend looking at Texas instead. If you're thinking of doing tax deeds, I'd also recommend looking at Texas, because once again, there's a few extra steps, and we'll talk about that right now, as a matter of fact. So when we talk about Texas, it's a redeemable deed state. What that means is if you go to the auction and you pick up the property, let's use really easy numbers. You buy a property for $10,000. There's two things that can really happen. One is you're gonna get that property, obviously, for steal, but the previous homeowner has one more chance. They can actually come back and buy that property off of you. And they've got a 6-month window to do that. And so we'll pick on Scott again. And he lost his property for a very small amount of money. You went, the property got bid up. You got it for $10,000. Scott can still come back up to 6 months later and offer you what you paid plus 25%. Now, on top of that, he would also have to pay for any what are called eligible expenses. And an eligible expense is if the roof is leaking and you have to fix it right away and you paid $10,000 for the roof, well, now you're going to make $2,500 profit on that roof. You have to change the carpets to make it livable, same thing. But if you go and you think, hey, you know what, I can make a lot of money if I put in this $100,000 chandelier, because then Scott's going to have to give me a $25,000 bonus. That's not an eligible expense. Eligible means that it was required to make the home safe, or to prevent any further damage to it, or if you're going to rent it, to make it rentable, but nothing else. And but the thing that's great is because you have that redeemable, you have that redemption period of 6 months. A lot of institutional investors don't really know how to deal with that. They don't really know, okay, well, if we get this property and we put it on our books, but then Scott comes back, what do we do during that 6-month period? They just don't understand how to deal with that. And that's some of the stuff that I teach, because there actually are ways you could flip that property in the first 6 months. There's ways that you could rent it. There's lots of things you can do with it, but most people who haven't really delved into these redeemable deeds don't know how to deal with it. And so once again, people like to go for the easy stuff. They like that low-hanging fruit. They don't want to do the extra work. So when we do a little bit of extra research and we find out how to deal with these sort of things, it eliminates a lot of our competitors. So there's only really two outcomes. Well, there's actually a third one, which we won't go into. If it's, well, actually, I guess we will go into it. If it's a homestead, in Texas, they have what's called a homestead. And that means that Scott's living in the property. It's not a rental property. He's actually living in it. He actually gets, there's a third option, and that's you get actually a 2-year redemption period. And during that 2 years, Scott would have to pay 25% if he pays you off in the first year, and 50% premium if he pays you off in the second year. And the great thing about these homesteads is if Scott is still in the house, in a lot of cases, the home is vacant, Scott's long gone, he knows he's going to lose the home. If he's actually still in the house, there's a pretty good chance you might get that 50% or that 25%, especially if you deal with Scott and you come up with some sort of terms, pretty good chance you're going to make that money. And so there's a lot of reasons why I love Texas. So here's an example of one of the properties one of my students picked up for $15,300. It was a 3-bedroom home. The after repair value was around $110,000 on it, and it rents for $900 a month. And so I just want to show you, just as an example, some of the things you can do when you pick up a property. Now, remember, a tax deed auction, that's not an exit strategy, that's an acquisition strategy. Once you get that property, here's some things that you can do with it. So you could buy it and sell it as is. A lot of people think, well, I might have enough money to go and pick up the property, but what about repairs? There's a lot of people out there that, especially handymen, that love to add sweat equity and add value by fixing it up themselves. There's people that love doing that sort of thing. I'm not one of them, but there's people out there, you put an ad on Craigslist saying fixer upper for sale and your phone will ring off the hook. You can do what most people think of when they think of these auctions. You can go and fix it up and flip it. You can buy it and turn it into a rental property, hold on to it. You could do vendor financing. So let's go back here. Imagine you paid $15,000 for this home, and you put an ad in on Craigslist saying $20,000 down, owner will carry, no qualifying necessary. What that means is you're going to become the bank. And in this case, you're asking for $20,000 down payment from somebody, and you're going to be the bank, and you're going to put a $90,000 mortgage on there because that adds up to $110,000. So you now have all your money back. You put 15 in, you now have 20,000 in your pocket to go back to the next auction. You now have a receivable for $90,000 where that new owner is paying you monthly installments. So you've got passive income coming in. And what do? You go rinse and repeat. Every time you do a strategy where you have all your money back in your jeans, that means you can rinse and repeat and keep doing it over and over and over again. Or you can do what my student who bought this, he actually just kept it as a rental property. Obviously, you can see it $900 a month. It doesn't take long to recoup your entire investment. And that's exactly what he did. Or you could do the BRRRR strategy and pull now, by the way, once again, realistic expectations, there's usually a seasoning period. You're not going to buy it. Then the next day they're going to give you a mortgage based on the $110,000 value. That's not going to happen. But if you hold on to that property for long enough, eventually you can go to a bank, pull all the money out of the property and then some, a lot more than what you put into it. And that's a non-taxable event, by the way, and gives you a lot more money to play with. And so you don't have to do a ton of these deals, totally make a big difference to your financial situation. So keep in mind, the opening bid is always, it's just what the back taxes are. And if there's any legal fees, whatever the county encountered in order to bring that property up to the auction block is what the starting bid is. And we see a lot of starting bids, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. Once again, two things can happen. The homeowner, I mentioned the third one, but two things normally happen. The homeowner either pays you what you paid plus 25% interest on what you paid for the property plus eligible expenses, or the property is 100% yours. You can do whatever you like with it. So here's an example of when we pull up the list every month, around 3 to 4 weeks before the auction takes place, the county publishes a list, and we see properties like this. Here's just one example. This actually, I made this PowerPoint before COVID. So this is an example from before COVID, but this property is worth over $300,000 and the opening bid is $13,000. So when I see this list, most people, they take this list and they do their research if they know how to do the research. A lot of them do the research like I did when I bought that property way back, when my only research was I want a pretty home that's close to where I live. So a lot of people, that's their strategy. But if you actually know what you're doing and you go through the different steps to do your proper due diligence, most people look at this, they do their homework, and then they go to the auction and they think that's the only way to monetize this. Now you're going to see a list with hundreds and hundreds of these properties, especially as we get further away from COVID. We're going to see the full inventory coming for sale. But to me, I mentioned earlier something I call the trifecta of real estate. And to me, there's 3 different ways to monetize this list that comes out. So when I see this list, remember earlier I said we're problem solvers. this is a perfect example of somebody who's got a really big problem. They're like a few weeks away from losing their home to auction. And so one of the strategies I recommend is dealing with the first part is dealing with a pre-foreclosure. These people still own the property, they still control it. The county does not own this property until after the auction takes place. So at this point, you can still make a deal with these homeowners. So back in 2007, 2008, when the last big recession hit, I had a business that I called Foreclosure Fixers. And with Foreclosure Fixers, I'm sure all of you, if you're not sending them out yourself, you've received those postcards that say, we buy homes, we buy ugly homes, we pay cash for homes. Well, I sent out flyers that said, I can help stop the foreclosure. And that I can tell you got a much higher open rate than people who send we buy homes, because I've done those before too. And but I actually took time to learn the foreclosure laws and learned how to help these people. And in some cases, I could actually help them stay in their home and not lose it to auction. And so, sometimes I would be I get two different types of people that would call me on my ads. There's the first type are people that sometimes bad things happen to good people. And I can't think of a time more than now during COVID where a whole bunch of people that have never, ever missed a payment in their life, they've always had great credit, always paid their bills on time. All of a sudden their business shut down or they lost their job. And all of a sudden they're not in a position to make payments anymore. So for people like that, quite often I'd be a lender to them, because these people, maybe they lost their job for a certain amount of time. They got behind. Let's say they got behind by $10,000. I would lend them $10,000, bail them out, and they would pay me back in monthly installments. I charge them a little bit of interest, but I create a win-win for them. And it worked out really, really well, because a lot of times the lenders would call me up and say, hey, we've got a whole bunch of people that are in the same position as that homeowner. Can you help, these other 10 people that are in the same boat? And so I did very, very well, because I didn't have to go chasing after people. I had the bank sending me business. You also have to remember, if people lost their job, they probably know 10 other people that lost their job too. And they were sending their friends to me. And so quite often I would either bail them out, they pay me back in installments, or I'd bail them out and say, hey, let's put it on the MLS and we'll do a joint venture together and we'll split some of the equity instead of you losing it to the bank and ruining your credit. So that's the first group of people. And by the way, if you ever do that, make sure you protect yourself and you have the proper signed documents in case they don't pay you. Nobody else is going to loan them money when they're behind on their mortgage. You're going to be the only one. And I was the only one crazy enough to do that, but I made a very good living doing that. So that's number one. Number two is you're going to get people though that they would have been in trouble even if there was no COVID, even if there was no, if there was no crisis happening. These are people that tend to live beyond their means. They tend to have a bigger house than what they can afford. They like to keep up with the Joneses. Never ever loan those people money, because they're going to burn through it. You're giving them a Band-Aid. They're going to burn through it and they're not going to be able to pay you back, and you're going to lose your investment. So for people like that, I would always give them what I call a soft landing. And what I mean by that is, quite often I'd be sitting across the table from them and I knew they were desperate. And I could offer them literally, next to nothing. But instead, I'd always make sure that they had money for a deposit on a rental property, several months rent. I'd give them money for food. And I'd also give them a little bit of coaching and teach them a little bit about how they can potentially get back into owning real estate, but something more affordable to them. Or sometimes I put them in one of my other properties and I do a rent to own for them, and I'd help them rebuild their credit. I give them some money skills, and once again, help them from, these people, sometimes they're so destitute, they'd probably literally be living on the streets if they can't find a relative or friend to live with. And so we'd always try to create a soft landing for them, put them in a better spot. And once again, they tell their friends. And if we save the mortgage from going to foreclosure, sometimes, especially private lenders, would call us up all the time and say, hey, can you help my other clients? And this was a very, very successful business. And the reason I tell you this is there's a lot of money to be made prior to the auction. Don't just think that going to the auction is a holy grail of real estate, because dealing with those pre-foreclosures there is very, very lucrative. And also it's a very, as I mentioned earlier, I like to be a problem solver and help these people before they lose their home. So if you feel bad about going to the auction, for example, because, these poor people, they're losing their home for, next to nothing, I feel very sad. Well, you have the opportunity to help them before that happens. And this list is published, like I said, usually a month prior to the auction taking place. You have lots of time to contact these people. So that's the first part, is the pre-foreclosure part. The second part is obviously that auction. If you feel guilty, you don't really have to feel guilty about getting great deals on these properties because these people have had lots of warning. It's not like they were one day late with their property tax bill and then it went up to auction. This is something that takes several years. These people haven't paid in a long, long time. And the only reason the county can wait that long is because investors like us, the county knows eventually they'll be able to get that money. If the county didn't have the ability to get that money, excuse me, down the road, they would foreclose a lot earlier and they would do a lien instead of the deed. So you don't have to feel bad. But in any case, the second strategy is to go to these auctions and pick up these properties. Once again, you need to know how to do your due diligence. And then the third thing, there's a third part of the trifecta, and it's called an overage. And very few people, even very sophisticated investors, very few of them know what this is. So let's pretend we went to the auction and the opening bid on a property was $5,000. And let's say it got bid up and it sold for $50,000. The first $5,000 belongs to the county fair and square. That's for the back taxes. That's owed to them. No problem. I have no problem with that. The additional $45,000, that actually belongs to the previous homeowner. And most previous homeowners have no clue that this money is owed to them. The county makes not much of an attempt to contact them because the county, there's a statute of limitations. After a certain amount of time, the county gets to keep that as their slush fund, do whatever they want with it. And so they don't make a whole lot of attempt to try to track down these homeowners. So imagine somebody just lost their home over $5,000 and they're actually owed $45,000 by the county, but the county's not trying to give it to them. And these people are now, in a lot of cases, like I said, living with friends, relatives, or on the street. So really great strategy. And this is really great, by the way, for people that don't, if you're listening, you're thinking, oh, I don't have a whole lot of cash. How am I going to do any of this stuff? I don't have a whole lot of capital. This is stuff that requires almost no capital because you might have to pay for a list. In a lot of cases, you don't have to pay for, you can get it for free, but you might have to pay a small amount to get the list. And then your job is really to track down these people and say, listen, I know somebody who owes you $45,000. If you're willing to split it with me, and you can take 10%, 20, 30, 40, whatever. I have a friend of mine, she takes 40%. Her smallest paycheck was 21,000 because she only goes after the bigger overages. But this is stuff that it's a game changer for the people that you contact. If you reach these people and say, listen, I know who somebody owes you a lump sum of money, and I know these people are desperate for money. If you're willing to split a portion of that with me, I'm willing to go and do all the paperwork and track down that money for you. It is a game changer for these people. They're in a really, really tough spot. But it's also a game changer for you as well, because one, you get paid to help somebody who's in really big trouble, who's owed money from the county. And it drives me crazy. If you went to 7-Eleven and stole a candy bar, the police would take you down to the station. If the county still steal hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, actually there's probably billions of dollars that are owed to people that is being held by counties right now. This happens all over the US. Nothing happens to them. If there's not somebody like us to go and let these people know this money is owed to them, it's just done. They have a certain amount of time to claim it. After that, that money's gone forever. And so it's a great win-win. It's a great way to help other people. And it's a great strategy for people that don't have a lot of capital. For those of you who are once again thinking, well, these poor people, I don't want to even take a piece of it. Well, and I say make money on 1 and 2, doing the pre-foreclosures and at the auctions, and then just do that as a nice gesture. Contact these people, tell them how to go get that money, where it's at, and you don't have to take anything if you don't want. You can certainly do it for charitable reasons as well. So that's a great thing about these strategies. They're all win-wins. So the real estate trifecta, once again, is those pre-foreclosures, number 1, and that's one of my favorites because we get to help people that are in a very, very tight spot. The auction itself, we see some smoking deals there. That does require some money. That's not a no money down strategy, but it's a low money down. And by the way, the pre-foreclosure stuff, if you are thinking once again, oh, I don't have any money to help, I can't buy these properties off these people. Well, think about doing things like wholesaling. You don't have to actually buy it. You can find a buyer for it and get paid to put the buyer together with the seller. And then the third thing, once again, requires almost no money. Overages. In some places, by the way, if you're searching for it, it's called surplus funds. It's the exact same thing, just different terminology, depending on where you go. And but that's a trifecta of real estate. And that to me is going to be where some of the best deals are coming up. Of course, the stuff Scott with notes, there's going to be a ton of, as you get foreclosures, it also creates a lot of performing and non-performing notes. So that's also great. But these are going to be some of the strategies that I think you really need to focus on. Now here, this is actually, I made this a little while ago because I was planning on doing an event September 4th to 7th in Houston, and teaching people how to do these strategies over 4 days. I've decided not to do it September 4th to 7th because I'm watching and waiting. I don't want anybody to get sick especially at one of my trainings. I'd feel horrible if somebody got sick. So I'm not actually putting a date on the calendar, but for the future, if this is something that interests you, my email address is mike@mikewolfmastery.com. Just let me know you saw me on Scott's program. I'm going to get that's the discounted price. I'm also going to give you a free ebook, which talks about some of my favorite strategies in more detail, some of the ones we talked about today, some of the other ones. So I'm going to post that in the chat box as soon as I stop sharing my screen. But I'm going to open up now to questions as well. But let me first post in. I have to get back to my other screen 1 second here. Sorry about that. All right, so there we go. So now you should see me again, hopefully.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm going to post in the chat box. I'm going to give you all a free ebook, and then I'm going to try to answer any questions. So feel free to put them in the chat box. I'm not sure if Scott's letting you raise your hand. I know there's a Q&A box.
They're raising their hands, and I've been moderating here. A couple questions here for you. When you were doing the 10K to help somebody with your securitization, is that in a second lien on the property?
Yeah, usually it would be. And in some cases, I would actually buy out the first mortgage if it was, depending on the financing. I would do different strategies depending on the situation. In general, it would be a second mortgage. In some cases, it was actually a third mortgage. But it really came down to the quality of the person, what their circumstances were. Because a lot of these people, like I said, just like right now, there's a lot of people that are unfortunately going to be in a little bit of trouble. But these are people that were traditionally very good with money. These aren't people they're not deadbeats. They just lost their job or their business shut down. Some of my friends are like that. They had perfect credit and their businesses just shut down during COVID. And of course, they're rebuilding now and they're going to be fine. But somebody's got to give them a chance because, if not, they're going to lose their home forever. And that's just adding salt to the wound. So I look at each one individually, but in general, I'd be in most cases doing a second mortgage.
Yeah, exactly. David has a question. How do you make money with soft landings? I think you missed it, David. Mike's taking somebody out of a bad situation, get them out of that house they owe money on or losing a foreclosure, and putting them in a rental, helping them with putting them in a property, give them some money because there's equity in the deal you're taking over. It all depends on the situation by situation basis. But if you're putting somebody in one of your rental properties, you're making rental income off of that, right?
One of the things I'd say is that I guess the best way to put it, instead of taking the home run, which I mean, a lot of these people are so desperate, they would have taken whatever. Instead of getting the home run, I would leave something on the table for them, for these people that were in trouble, help them get back on their feet. Instead of getting the home run, maybe I get to second. I know you're a baseball fan, Scott, so I'm using a baseball analogy. You get to second or third base. You wouldn't get the home run, but guess what? Then they tell all their friends about how you rescued them, and their friends would start calling you. And once again, we started to get calls from, especially the small lenders, private lenders would, with the second mortgages would often call us because we rescued we quite often saved their loans. And so we didn't have to go looking for business for very long. It started off where we sent out flyers. After a while, we didn't send out anything. We were swamped and we'd have people calling us. And so I found sometimes getting that home run, yeah, you get the home run, but that's where's your next home run coming from? Instead, I'll take 100 second and third base hits all day long over one home run.
Exactly. David, you're missing the point on this. He says, so the soft landings are the situation where he actually bought the deed then. No, if you missed out something, soft landings was helping somebody of the property, taking the property over, subject to paying off the taxes because people are walking away, helping the private investor that lended on the asset that didn't have the extra money to come to the table. Because if you use your self-directed IRA to fund a purchase, you can't just go write a check with money out of your own checking account going forward. So people need somebody to step in to pay off those back taxes because they didn't have enough. There's a variety of scenarios out there. It's just not with the deed.
I think the best way to describe it is I would buy their property, but instead of stealing it and getting it for the very rock bottom price that I could have, I would leave something on the table for that person, help them get into another property. And then I would still help them afterwards. I'd give them advice on rebuilding their credit, getting back into home ownership. And quite often they turn into clients down the road for me as well. And so, but yeah, just I was buying their home, but I just wasn't giving them a rock bottom price. I was actually leaving some equity in there for them as well.
Yeah. Another question here, and I want to go over this a little bit. You asked, Why again do the county owe the money to the homeowner? Okay, so in Mike's example, the homeowner owed $5,000 in back taxes to the county. When you go to a tax foreclosure, oftentimes you have investors bidding on the asset, which if it's worth $100,000, it might get bid up to $70,000. Okay, the county keeps their first $5,000 because that's what they're owed. There's a $65,000 overage that is either owed to the homeowner or to the existing lien holders, the first lien or second lien. So let's say there was $40,000 owed to the first lien holder. Well, then me as the bank and the first lien holder, I can claim that $40,000. If there's $20,000 left or $25,000 left, there's a second for 10. The second gets to 10. Then there's 5,000 left over. But let's say they owned it free and clear. They weren't paying any freaking attention. They're out of the country. It's a home owned left to them from a father or something like that. Guess what? County takes the 5, they go claim, they get that 65, there's no outstanding liens on the property. And in some states, it's all about who claims the overage first as well. So it's a state by, like in Indiana, if the homeowner claims it before the bank does, the homeowner gets the overage versus the lender. So we do overages all the time. We find money out there. Okay. Does a question here from Pratik, not sure if this was answered earlier. Does a first lien note holder have the first right on the property over a tax deed after foreclosure?
They actually have first right before the auction, because one of the things that happens is by law, the county has to notify everybody who's on title.
Yep.
And so if you were a mortgage holder, you would get something from the lawyers representing the bank, representing the county, saying, hey, we're putting this home up for auction on such and such a date. You have the first right to pay it off and rescue it from, because once it goes to the auction, the liens get wiped out, they disappear. Yep. And so to protect your investment, if you're the lien holder, you would have first right to bail it out, but you'd be surprised how many of them don't. And especially because you have to remember that the people are quite often behind on the mortgage. They're not just behind on the tax, they're behind on everything. And so the bank doesn't want to throw good money after bad. And so they just let it go. But they do have the first right. It won't even make it to the auction if the bank bails it out, which sometimes they do. Absolutely, they do.
And me being a bank and a lot of notes, we get letters like this all the time. So yeah, we pay off the liens. We'll even have the borrowers call if the borrowers want to walk away from the property. We have them call and try to negotiate a payment plan first, and then we'll take over that payment plan. So Charlie asked a question: are overages the same as surplus funds?
Yes, exact same thing, just different terminology. Yeah, 2 different ways that they're, how they may show up. Overages and surplus funds are the 2 most common ways you'll see them.
Now you'll also have surplus funds from other things happening: insurance checks, old paychecks. I've had surplus funds for turned out it was an overtime check that from Verizon back 10 years ago was sitting out there in surplus funds out there. Insurance policies, if you've moved on, or utility bills are very common that are trying to get returned. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you mentioned Harris County in Houston, Texas. In April 1st is the first month they had auctions back, and there's just almost 700 foreclosures, primarily not quite taxes, but hard money loans and things like that were thrown out there. But yeah, you're starting to see tax liens starting to pop back up here in different parts of the country too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Things are getting back to normal, at least for now. I hope it continues to do that. But of course, everything's so up in the air with COVID, we never know. But so far it's going the right direction and things are opening again.
Mm-hmm. So if the bank pays off the back taxes, can they foreclose on the property? Yeah. Because if they're not paying the back taxes, they're probably not paying the mortgage.
Yeah, that's the main reason the bank would pay it off, is to protect their loan. And they're going to take over the foreclosure, because if the county continues with that foreclosure, the banks aren't going to see any money. So the banks want to regain control, and they do that by paying off those taxes, keeps the county out of the equation, and then the bank does whatever they need to do at that point.
You have a kind of an interesting situation taking place in Nevada with HOAs being able to foreclose and wipe out first lien. So you even see a lot of banks on property in Vegas and Nevada paying off not just the taxes, but the old HOA liens.
Absolutely.
Avoid.
Yeah, that's the whole. Yeah, those HOAs they can add up too, and we've seen a lot of those. And there's actually auctions for HOAs can actually foreclose on properties now too. So you see some of those as well.
Yeah, exactly. Great questions, everybody. Keep them coming here. Mike, you guys, the beauty of you living in Mexico right now and this strategy is you can do this from anywhere, right?
Absolutely. Well, I've got teams on the ground. So I've got people that go to the auction for me. I've got people that drive around and will videotape not just the property, but the streetscape. I've got contractors to fix them up. I've got realtors to help flip them. I've got property managers. And so the people who take my training, and once again, I don't have a date on the calendar. So instead I'm giving you a free ebook today. And you can email me once again if you want to be on the waiting list. But one of the great advantages, I don't just teach you how to do it, but I teach you how to work smart, not hard. And you can actually use my team to do the work. So I've got one of my students as far away as Australia who participates in these auctions. But obviously you can't fly, if you're flying from Australia to Houston every month, that'd be a lot of time and a lot of expense. So you can do this from the comfort of your own home safely because I have the teams. That was one of the things, by the way, when I was trying to figure this out. Some of the books I read were saying you could do this from the safety of your own home. And they talked about how you could look at the pictures on, Google Maps and stuff. And that is the most dangerous thing you can do because during my training, it's 4 days. 2 days are in the classroom and at the workshop, and we're actually on our computers looking at the list, going through each property one by one. And usually the pretty ones are the ones that everybody's like all excited about, of course. And those are usually not the biggest, the biggest money makers are usually not the prettiest ones, by the way. But in any case, there's times where, my students are all set. I want to buy this property. I'm going to bid on this property. And then on the third day, we actually go on a bus together and we drive around the city driving for dollars. And we look at the properties on that list. And it's like, oh, it'll look really good in the picture, but now there's like smoldering ashes where a home used to be. And so what you see is what you get. You can't go back after and say, oh, well, according to the picture, it looked like this. When you bid at these auctions, you're buying as is, where is. You've got no recourse. You can't come back after. They take no liability for the pictures, for anything. You have to do your own due diligence. You have to be very, very careful. So day 3, we actually drive by and look at the properties. Day 4, we actually go as a group to the auction. But I see so many people making huge mistakes at these auctions. I've seen people bid on what they thought was a beautiful home, which if they had done their homework and driven by, they know that there's no home there anymore. So you have to be very, very careful.
Yeah, that's pretty common, even in the note business, making sure you're buying something that actually there's not a slab or, like you said, right, an empty lot or a small.
Making sure you're buying an asset. Exactly. That's huge. Exactly. So important.
Yeah, exactly. What other questions do you guys have for Mike today? Somebody asked online, do you invest all over Texas or just Harris County?
Well, I personally, I would invest all over Texas. I do Harris County specifically because I built a team there. I've got a very solid team that I trust. And they seem to have the largest number of properties. But if I had more time to go build more teams, I would probably do the same in like San Antonio and Austin and Dallas, Fort Worth. Those are all great markets. Texas in general is just a great place to do this strategy. I probably wouldn't look at the really small towns,
right,
but every single county has a strategy for dealing with this, not just in Texas, but all over the United States. So it doesn't have to be that county. I just have a really solid team there, and there's enough supply consistently. And because it's a little bit more complex than just going to a straight deed state, because of the redeemable deed, the competition is not as fierce as some of the other markets. And so we can consistently get properties there.
Yeah. Marcus from YouTube asks, his quick question, would it be better to go straight to the tax lien holder or the original owner to get the property under contract?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you have, and that's that whole pre-foreclosure stuff. I mean, that's reach out to these people. That's a list of people. When I see a list, that's a list of people in major trouble. They're just weeks away from losing their home. And so contact them, see if you can negotiate with them. Sometimes if the mortgage numbers don't make sense, sometimes you might have to reach out to the mortgage holder and say, listen, you guys are about to lose your mortgage. Maybe we can negotiate a little bit. So there's different ways to put together deals. But yeah, waiting until the auction still works. You can make a lot of money just focusing on the auction, doing nothing else. But if you do all 3 of these things, there is so much opportunity, and especially right now. And the reason I particularly like working with the owners before it goes to auction, it feels really good to know that you bailed somebody out that was, who knows what their fate would have been if they would have lost that home on the auction block. Where are they going? What does their life look like after that? If we can give them a solution and come up with a win for them and get paid for it, that's why I'm still excited after all these years. I wake up excited every day to do what I get to do. And so it never gets old. It never feels like work. And I feel I feel very fulfilled doing what I get to do. So I love it.
What's the best tool? Jace asks here, what's the best tool to find out the seasoning period for each state?
Well, seasoning period doesn't depend on the state. That depends on the lender. So if you're looking to do, and I see you're talking about the BRRRR strategy, taking equity out of the property, and that depends on the lender. Each lender has their own policy. So you just have to talk to the lender, and that's also a moving target, by the way. So if you talk to them today, 3 months from now, they may change their mind. I just find banks are very interesting, and they it's a moving target. So, but yeah, the best way to find out is just contact a few different banks and ask them what does that seasoning period look like for them.
Yeah, it's usually 90 days when it comes to season. I think he meant as far as redemption period too.
No, redemption period will vary from place to place. In Texas, it's always going to be 6 months, unless it's a homestead, in which case it becomes 2 years. If it's 2 years, and by the way, none of those numbers, you can reach out to the previous homeowner and get them to waive their rights. Sometimes you're going to cut them a check. But for example, if you know that person's never going to come back in that 6 months, maybe they inherited the property and they just didn't want it, they're not going to redeem it in 6 months. So you go and you negotiate with them and say, hey, if I give you $500, will you waive your right of redemption? And now all of a sudden you're not waiting that 6 month period. So there's ways to deal with that to reduce that. But in general, in Texas, 6 months. In those other redeemable deed states that we mentioned, can be shorter, can be longer, just depends on the state. And by the way, I'm not an accountant, but I will tell you that because they have redeemable deeds in Hawaii, if you happen to take a vacation around the same time as an auction, you might be able to write part of that off. Just disclaimer, I am not an accountant or lawyer or anything like that. So, but
that's a trick.
You might be able to. Yeah. You stay in a hotel if you're going to research your deeds and look at the properties, you need to stay in a hotel. So just saying.
Yeah, exactly. It's whatever's associated. Maybe just one night if you're staying a week and looking at one property one night. But yeah, I've done that.
There you go. So talk to your accountant. But anyway, good excuse to go to Hawaii.
Exactly, because there's enough tax people behind on taxes out there right now for sure.
Oh, it's so expensive to live there in the first place. Yeah, if you lost your job for any amount of time, everything is so expensive in Hawaii. So yeah, a lot of people will be behind, unfortunately. But that's why we go there to help. Once again, I do the exact same thing, though. I talk to the homeowner before the auction and try to come up with a win for them. And that's why I love this industry. Just get to help a lot of people, and they're just sitting there with their head buried in the sand and hoping the problem's going to go away, and it won't, of course. So
yeah, that's so truthful. And that's one of the things
every day you're doing notes. You see that all. I mean, you see that every single day. All day.
And we look at so many properties. I mean, so many notes. And we're doing due diligence, and when we see that it's not the existing borrower, it's the name is changed on the county district versus what we see on the note, we know there's probably been some sort of either a deed transfer or a tax sale. Right. And that most people would just give up and move on. Well, I take it to the next level, and I love the tax overage. We look and call the county. Hey, how much is owed? And is there a tax sale? Is there a tax overage? We've picked up deals where there was 75, 100,000 in a tax overage sitting waiting for the lender to claim.
Yeah.
If you didn't know that, and that's why I got you on here, is not just the tax sales and taking the property back or working with the borrowers on that. There's so many ways to work with people on this, and it's such a great strategy out there.
Absolutely, and it goes hand in hand with the stuff you're doing with the notes. So it is just such a great, the perfect fit, good mesh.
Exactly. Now you're probably knowing the dates and knowing that the tax sales, the sheriff sales, stuff like that, take part in the first weekend or the first Tuesday of the month. I'm willing to bet your class, whenever you schedule, will be around that first Tuesday of the month, correct? For the most part?
Yeah, it's always going to be Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and the Tuesday is going to be the day of the auction. And that auction always takes place on the first Tuesday of the month. So my goal originally I was going to do September. It feels too soon with what's going on right now. And once again, I think health is more important than money. So I'm not putting a date on the calendar. I'm hoping to do November. That'd be what I'm shooting for, but obviously there's a lot of things not in our control right now. And, but I can't wait. I can't wait to teach some new students and go back to Texas and hopefully see you one of these days in person. So that'll be great.
But when you have the class in Houston next, I'll be there with you, buddy.
All right. I'm looking forward to that, buddy.
Yeah. Now I got a question here from online. What's the best source for lists of these deals? Do you go directly to the county, or is there a list provider?
Yeah, it's going to vary from place to place. In Houston, it's a site. Used to be Publicans. They changed it to something else, but it forwards to there. So I'm going to put that. I'm going to actually type that in the chat box. It's Publicans. No, I can't type. But 1 second here. publicans.com. It's going to send you to something, I think lgbs.com, which is a law firm. But you can get the lists on there. I just want to caution you, because you have a list. With the list, I would do the pre-foreclosures. I would not go to the auction. It's so easy to lose your money at that auction.
Yeah.
I'll give you a really good example. There's somebody in, I think it was Florida, shortly before COVID started. And he thought he had bought this really beautiful, this actually made the news. And he thought he bought this really nice villa worth like 200 and some odd $1,000. There were two villas, they were attached. They were side-by-side villas. And it turns out that he actually bought the strip of land that's 1 foot wide and like 100 feet long that separates the two villas. He had no clue. And this is stuff. So he ended up paying, I think he got lucky. He only paid like 11,000 for it. And he thought he got the deal of the century until he found out what he actually quote unquote won. But he actually bought a useless piece of land for 11 grand. And that was so easily avoidable, because if he had taken the training, I'll give you guys a clue. If the address says 0 Main Street, that 0 means there's no piece of property on that land. Well, that's just one of the many, many things that can backfire on you. So don't take that list and don't show up at an auction without knowing what you're doing. When I first started, like I said, I had a lot of conflicting information, and I had to make some expensive mistakes to figure some of this stuff out. And that's why I teach it now, to show you where the landmines are, what to avoid, how to do it properly. But absolutely take that list and contact those homeowners. And if you have some strategies in the pre-foreclosure world, or if you're going to wholesale, that's a lot less risky. But don't go to an auction without knowing what you're doing. You're just going to lose your money.
Yeah, I was at an event in PG County, actually, Prince George County in Maryland, with a student. Went to a foreclosure auction, and there's a guy dressed in a suit, all sharp. Property comes up, opening bid's 29,000, and I'm like looking at the address on my phone and stuff like that. I was like, that's the house like worth 150. That might be pretty good. And somebody's like, it's a second lien. I was like, oh, okay, nope, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Well, this guy, opening bid 29,100. Guy says 29,100. Any seconds, any thirds, sold. And the guy walked past me. He was like, oh my God, he was just beating me. I listened to the tapes, and I did this to it myself. Wow, I didn't know it was be this easy. And so he's like, do you know you just bought a $29,000 second lien behind a $150,000 first?
Yeah, it's always nice when you get that call the next day and you find out you owe 150 grand. But yeah, you just have to be so careful, and all the stuff is avoidable, but don't be in a rush. And as much as I would love to do a training today, and I would love to teach everybody how to do this, just be patient. These auctions have been there forever. It's not like this is just started. It's not a limited time offer where it's going to go away in 6 months. This is here forever. And learn how to do it properly, and then be consistent with it. And that's really the key: consistency, taking action, but also knowing how to do it properly, and not trying to wing it. If you wing it, and I knew when I was winging it, I went armed with some information and some conflicting information, but I knew I was going to lose money on some of the deals. But that was the price I was willing to pay to learn how to do this properly. So you don't have to do that. You can learn how to do it properly in the first place, and from somebody who's already been there and done that. And I know the stuff that's true, and I know the stuff that's false. And there's a lot of really bad information out there, unfortunately.
Yeah. Another list source besides Publicans is also foreclosure.info. That's the Roddy list here in Texas, or foreclosure listing service. They provide list source, not just on traditional foreclosures, but also the tax foreclosures, the sheriff sales. It's a really kind of a nice there's numerous different places to get it, and depending on the county, you want to contact the county and ask them how you get that list, because it's not always easy to find on a website like it is in Harris County and around Texas. Sometimes a little bit more difficult. Sometimes you have to subscribe to something, or a printed newsletter sort of thing. So each county deals with it slightly differently, but every single one of them has either liens or deeds or redeemable deeds. So they're all you need to get rid of those properties. Yeah. J.A. asks one more question, because Texas is a homestead and has 2 extra years for redemption, but is that on both the lien and deed?
So first of all, there are no liens in Texas. Everything there is a redeemable deed, which is kind of like a cross between a lien and a deed. So just to clarify that, but it's 2 years. It's 2 years from the day you buy it. And if the owner redeems within the first year, they give you 25%. If they redeem on day 366 to the end of the second year, they've got to give you 50%. And in the case of a homestead, that means that the homeowner is most likely living in that property. And so I would be negotiating. I'd be talking with that homeowner and saying, either coming up with a solution for them. I would try to come up with a solution for them so that you make that 25 or 50% sooner than later, so you get your money back in circulation. Or you know, if they plan on redeeming it, I'm going to try to make it easy for them. I'm going to try to work with them. And so I always try to work with whoever's in the property. If there's a homeowner there, I'm always going to try to make it easy for them. If there's a tenant in there, I'm going to try to keep that tenant as long as they're paying rent, and but sometimes they'll say, you don't own this property, I'm not paying you. And sometimes you have to take legal action, but you know, whenever we can, we always try to make it a win for anybody who we have to deal with in the transaction. And but homeowners, for sure, they're going through some tough times, and if you can figure out a way to make it a win for them, that's the key to this being successful in this business, is just trying to create wins. And I know Scott does that with his notes. You always try to create a win for the other people, not being a shark and trying to make the biggest paycheck and not caring about the fate of those other people that are on the other side of that transaction. These people need our help.
Yeah, karma's a bitch when it doesn't work in your favor, for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's so true.
One final question. We'll let you get back to your Mexican vacation there. What are the 5 redeemable deed states again, Mike? Texas and what else?
It's Texas, Connecticut, Hawaii. Oh boy, give me a second here. Georgia, and what's the 5th one? I don't do them anywhere else. I don't. There is a 5th one. I can go back and find the.
Don't worry about it. They can go back and watch the replay to catch.
Watch the replay. Exactly. There you go. Yeah, good job.
Tennessee's
there we go. Thank you.
Thanks,
there we go. Perfect. That's a great place to be buying real estate right now too. Tennessee.
Texas and Tennessee both well. Mike, once again, man, thanks for coming on and just delivering some good stuff, man. Just great content, great actions, guys. If you're interested in it, reach out to it. Get Mike's book. You got to listen and alert you for the next one. When he has his schedule, we'll also alert you for that as well. But take advantage of it, guys. Get on the list. Reach out to him. Texas is a hot state. That Texas triangle, you'll be doing Texas 2 steps because you're enjoying it here and drinking some cold beer.
Love it. And I'm going to meet you. One of these days, I'm going to get there and we're going to go for some cold beer.
Amen. Some cold beer and barbecue, baby.
Sounds good, buddy. Great to see you. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, Mike, thank you, man. Great to see you as well, too. Be safe. Have fun down there, all right?
I always do.
Have a shot of good tequila for me, all right?
I will do that.
All right.
Thanks so much, Scott.
Thanks, bud. Bye.
Take care.